Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
I think we should change the intro because it doesn't always revolve around Fantasy Premier League.
This one
Days like
doesn't.
this doesn't. People's poll, usual drill for regular listeners, you'll know. We put out a bunch of topics, see what people want us to talk about, and whatever wins, wins. The choices, the runners, the riders, and the winner, James, this week were...
dementia. In football, it's kind of in topic at the moment. There was a game trialled, I believe, in lower leagues at the weekend with no heading permitted. There's certain specifications have come into training. Nuno Espirito Santo, amongst some wild tactical ideas, made some comments that didn't go down very well, I think, on Friday in terms of a suggestion that they might have been ignoring certain protocol because it limits you with the amount of heading that should be done in training. Limits you with the amount of set piece practice that you can do. That didn't win the vote. Neither did Hearts, who we put in the vote again. And despite a little bit of a social media campaign going on from a few individuals yesterday, didn't win the vote, unfortunately. We are definitely going to cover the topic of Hearts, the UK's biggest fan-owned football club, next Tuesday on Patreon. The winner of the vote was the idea of a biennial World Cup. Biennial standing for every other year, bringing the World Cup forward from not every 4 years, but every 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's allied with also a plan to make the Euros every 2 years as well, and alternate.
No.
Or possibly.
No.
I've heard the two bandied about in similar conversations. What I find fascinating when thinking about this, obviously, was brought to the forefront by the Professor Wenger as a suggestion. The more I scratched into the reasons that he had given initially for wanting to do this, the more I was like, is that it? Is that it? It didn't feel like it was a suggestion or a campaign that came with masses of thought behind it. It just felt very light, the reasons for wanting to do it. And I must stress, I'm talking about the reasons they stated for wanting to do it publicly, because obviously there's shitloads of reasons otherwise. But primarily he's talking about the fact that players don't have the opportunity to win the World Cup often enough as one of the main reasons for wanting to do it.
It's why Harry Kane wants to leave Tottenham and play in the Champions League, because there isn't enough opportunities to win it. I don't know. I feel like there are certain sporting things that we really shouldn't fuck around with. I mean, no one's trying to move the Olympics for every 2 years, are they?
No.
So why football? What I think is really interesting about this is because Wenger's become kind of the spokesperson of this idea, that he doesn't just feel like a money grab. Because FIFA make a shitload of money. I mean, made about £6 billion off the last World Cup, right?
Yeah, we talk about the finances. I do think so. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that having it every 2 years, because very few teams have retained the World Cup, do you think increasing it to every 2 years will increase the chances of a country retaining the World Cup? Or do you think it's still going to be a spread of countries winning it?
In terms of a 4 year cycle, it's quite a long time, isn't it? Between, say, I mean, Spain dominated 08, 10 and 12, but then to do it for any longer than that's unlikely. So yes, it increases the possibility. France won World Cup in 98, Euros in 2000. So yes, definitely increased the possibility.
There is evidence that...
But it also increases the possibility of an African nation or a Croatia who got to the last World Cup final actually winning the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the argument does stand there where he's saying the average age of a squad in the World Cup is 27 or 28 years old. By the time the next World Cup rolls around, these guys are 31, 32, 33, and they clearly can't win it. We just saw the Italian centre-backs aged 50 winning the Euros. But
it's only Chiellini.
Okay, he's 50 and the other one's 10, so they got an average age of 30. They did okay at an older age, and I think players are playing into their 30s more than ever before. So I don't know if the argument makes logical sense. I don't know if it does stand up necessarily as a reason to want it change the way that international football is structured, tournament-wise?
At the moment, you've got many of the confederations. South America kind of and ahhing about it, but the other confederations, sort of Asia, Oceania, Africa, North America, they want this to go through.
Yep. I think it was brought to the table by Saudi Arabia originally.
Is that right?
Yeah, to the FIFA has 200 and something odd members.
Back to money. Yeah,
a little. But yeah, I think it was brought to the table originally by Saudi Arabia at one of the FIFA meetings.
It's not just someone who just had, suddenly some guy in Saudi Arabia.
No, I mean, they've been talking about it behind the scenes probably for a while.
Yeah, Sepp Blatter first wanted to do it in the late 1990s. First had the discussions, kind of got thrown out. And FIFA actually did an investigative study back in 2016 to find out the feasibility of doing the World Cup every 2 years. And the feasibility report came back and said, stick to 4 kids. It's too much.
Yeah.
So, yes, in terms of the ability for the amount of different players to compete in multiple World Cups, for player X to compete in 6 World Cups in his lifetime rather than 3 World Cups, of course. We've also expanded the tournament as of 2026, which will be in America, Canada and Mexico, to 48 teams rather than 32. You know how that's going to work?
Complicated.
Nah, not overly. Groups of 3, which is 16 groups. 16 groups of 3. Top 2 go through. Knockouts from last 32. So it's still 7 games to win it. Guarantees everyone only 2 games rather than 3. But then you get more teams there in the first instance. So if you win one of your group games, you're through, right?
Yeah.
Unless you all beat each other and then
it's a bit
go with it. Yeah, listen, there's going to be some farcical, let's play for a draw here kind of stuff, no doubt about it. In any case, we're letting more teams go, and there's more teams coming from outside. It's not like 20 teams from Europe now qualifying and stuff. That's not going to be the case. And Europe, I think Europe and UEFA don't particularly want it as much because they've already got their own kind of global international tournament with the European Championship, which, let's be honest, 80 to 85% of the teams who enter the World Cup, of the teams that have got a chance of winning it, are from Europe.
Correct.
Realistically, you've got Europe, Brazil, Argentina, perhaps Uruguay if they're having a good spell, perhaps a couple of other South Americans, perhaps an emerging African, but no African or Asian teams ever won it, right? Essentially, you could put all the countries around the world and it's still likely to be a European winner, right?
Yeah.
It was Germany's winning. Brazil was the first one that a European team had won outside of Europe, so that's not even an argument anymore. So Brazil 2002 is the last one.
Yeah, I heard, and I was very surprised by this, but I'm now thinking about it, I don't know why I was, that UEFA is richer than FIFA.
I'm not convinced that's the case, but UEFA, of course, obviously has the Champions League as well, right?
And if you factor in the commercial revenues from the Champions League plus the Euros and the other competitions that UEFA has, that they're making money year in, year out with the Champions League, and FIFA are not. And the money that FIFA have been making from World Cups, generally, they've got historic costs, debt, stuff that they need to pay for. We would really need a real investigation into FIFA's finances. But part of the reason why UEFA are not so keen is they're making their money anyway from Champions League and the Euros every 4 years is way more in commercial revenue potentially than what FIFA can make from a World Cup once every 4 years. So FIFA do need to think about how they can increase their revenue, and that's surely got to be a reason why they want to increase it to every 2 years.
There's also, from the European perspective, and we hear about it all the time, is the welfare of the players, which I think it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing, really, where obviously with COVID and what's happened, we kind of know this stretch that we've had, and it's going to continue obviously with an earlier start next year because the Qatar World Cup's in December. I mean, football doesn't really reset properly till we get to sort of 23, 24 in terms of an actual break.
Standard
the actual
season.
Summer of 2023 is the first proper kind of reset.
Empty summer, yeah.
Yeah, until they decide to have Club World Cup, which has been it's the other idea that FIFA
you'll probably be
keep
winning
the
Audi trophy. I think we've got our eyes on the Betway Cup in summer of 2023 as well.
Congratulations in advance,
and congratulations on your Audi. It might be Lidl by then.
Probably.
Okay, what's below Audi and Lidl? Poundland.
This Club World Cup's this other idea they've had, because obviously Chelsea have got to play in the Club World Cup this year, which is 7 teams, one from
every
each
continent.
coefficient who's won their domestic, or I think it's 6 plus or 7 plus the champions from the home nation, which obviously would have been Japan, but we don't know where it's going to be played yet. It becomes 7-8 team tournament. The European team doesn't compete till the semi-final, but they want to expand that to around about either 16 or 24 team tournament and have it in the summer, don't they? So this is a FIFA grab again.
Yeah, because it's got global competition.
Now, in terms of the clubs then, so your big Premier League clubs, let's say the Super League 12 or whatever, yeah, they'll go and play in that. It's brilliant exposure. Go and have a proper tournament in Australia, Japan, Qatar, wherever. So that kind of relates back to the idea of, FIFA trying to compete with, well, I wouldn't say compete so much with UEFA, but see what UEFA are doing financially. I want a slice of that pie.
There are strong rumours, I think they've been proven as well, that the Super League 12 were in talks with FIFA prior to the announcement to get FIFA to endorse the competition, and FIFA were having those conversations, like Infantino and stuff were having these conversations, and it could well have been the FIFA World League or Super League or whatever. Now, that's bonkers.
Of course it is.
It's bonkers, but it again just goes to show that the first, these clubs are willing to do this. I think someone somewhere at FIFA would have turned around and said, well, sounds like an interesting opportunity to make some money and sponsorship and have a competition, club-based competition that's ours. Let's go down this road and investigate it, as opposed to the gut instinct reaction, which is, this is not going to happen. This is never going to get off the ground. The fact that they entertained the conversation, I find unnerving.
I take it you heard what happened with the Super League last night.
Not last night, no.
Yeah, news last night. They're all getting let off, no fines, nothing.
Oh, okay, I've missed that. I haven't seen that yet.
Which, that's not a podcast. That's just, unfortunately, something we heard a couple of weeks ago was likely to happen because it wouldn't stand in the court of law, apparently.
No fines.
Thrown out. That's it. UEFA can't do nothing to these clubs, which is a joke. Like, I support one of them. They should have got thrown to the wall. Anyway, that's a different podcast. So what would happen to European Championship if we went World Cup every 2 years? What would happen to Euros?
It would have to slot in one of the years where it wasn't the World Cup every 4 years.
Of the suggestions, it wasn't from Alexander Seferin, but it was someone else who works at UEFA, was we're not moving our tournament, so good luck with a World Cup with no European teams. Was one of the arguments. Because Euros is in an even year as well, right?
Yeah, but we could adjust that to be in an odd year.
Well, why should UEFA do that?
So you've got World Cup, Euros, World Cup gap. World Cup, Euros, World Cup gap.
That's part of the plan, but that gap would become Club World Cup or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there'll always be something. Yeah. There'll always be something.
The Intercontinental South American Tournament, or I mean, one of the things actually listed, it's believed a lot of the European clubs are against it as well. Any guesses for why? Besides the obvious in terms of players and how much they play and stuff like that.
Oh, why would? Oh, of course. What is Tottenham doing next summer? They're going to go to Asia, America, basically, let's be honest, it's Asia and America, the two big markets. Where are West Ham going to be next summer? Will be in either Asia or America, where all the clubs going to be
COVID-dependent, touch wood.
Yeah, touring different parts of the world on their pre-season tour. You may as well call it pre-season commercial tour.
It's not quite the same tour, though, if Tottenham goes somewhere and Heung-min Son and Harry Kane can't play, is it?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, Tottenham going to Korea with Son will have big commercial deals and spreading the...
Not quite sure why we haven't yet, as it goes, by the way.
Yeah.
Maybe they're taking them for granted. They've gone, they all support us anyway.
I think they think Kim Jong-un supports Arsenal, so it's probably not safe to go within a 100-mile radius of him.
Wrong Korea.
I don't know, mate. To be honest with you, it's funny that previously, had an announcement like this come out, I would have just dismissed it out of hand as someone having a laugh, and it's never going to get passed through and whatever. Nowadays, I think this shit could go through. I feel more and more like these crazy ideas that keep coming out.
The thing is,
are likely to go through.
We live in for the majority of us, we live in our bubble in terms of European football's kind of king and all that kind of stuff. If this goes to a vote globally, it'll get passed through.
I think when Saudi Arabia mooted it at a meeting, it was over 160, 170 members out of 210, 220, something like that, were for it.
Yeah, we just got to think about this logically. There's around about, don't quote me on the number, but I think it's around about 212, 215 member nations, of which, there were 45 to 50 or so in Europe.
European, yeah. It was 160 to 170 of them were for
even
it.
if the South Americans say they're like, no, we want to protect the Copper America, there is only like 10 to 12 of them.
Yeah, it's not exactly
so, and if everyone else is for it, that's it. It wins.
Done. Yeah.
As simple as that.
And it wouldn't surprise me if some of the smaller European nations were for it.
So I think UEFA feel like FIFA are going on this kind of campaign, this advertising campaign, rather than kind of really truly announcing what their actual physical plans are. But I think if this gets kind of enough head of steam, then it'll pass through, Suj. Because the Asian, the African, Oceania, and North American nations will probably all vote to go with it. Even though a lot of these major nations, so USA, I realise they didn't qualify for the last one, but they nearly always qualify for the World Cup, don't they? Mexico always qualify. A lot of these nations. But then I suppose if you take that, say, USA, Mexico, I mean, that's nearly always the final of the CONCACAF Gold Cup, isn't it? Yep. Nearly always. You might have a Canada or one of the Caribbean nations occasionally does very well. But most of the time, they might as well just say, well, we'll see you in the final in 3-4 weeks. Mm-hmm. So from a competitive standpoint, I mean, I'm sure whether that tournament's normally held in USA or Mexico, I'm sure they make decent money from it, but it's not the same. No. They're going to share a World Cup with Canada in 2026, and it will be monstrous money-wise to have that back in America, kind of what we're talking 30 years or so after the first time, with a very different outlook to soccer.
Yeah. Part of the reasons behind Saudi Arabia pushing it forward is just they were the first ones too, and one of the arguments that some other people have made around this biannual World Cup is to give more countries a opportunity to host a World Cup. The likes of Saudi Arabia haven't ever hosted a tournament like this. Qatar is going to be the first in the Middle East. And they're saying that, look, the World Cup seems to move around some of the more established nations more regularly. If we have it every 2 years, the World Cup can go to places that it might not go to for a while. The feeling is that there's quite a few countries, England included, that are in the queue to host the World Cup that haven't. We've only ever had one World Cup in Africa. Qatar will be the first in the Middle East.
A lot of these, like Morocco, have tried to have it a number of times. They're probably the African country that would probably next have it. But one of the major issues with them, I think, has been getting the infrastructure right and stuff.
Yeah, right? The Middle East is a slightly different case because of how rich they actually are. But there is very rarely, if ever, I would be surprised, a case of a country that's made a profit from hosting a tournament.
How big's Qatar is square miles? Because it's tiny, right?
Tiny.
And they're like 12 stadiums in like a 20-mile radius or something.
It's tiny.
So what are they going to do with these stadiums?
Exactly. The problem is, for countries that host the World Cup, like I said, that the majority, if not all, never make a profit from hosting the World Cup. I'm sure there's knock-on benefits and reasons they do it. But in the current climate, you're talking about smaller countries hosting it. Like even we had issues with Brazil with the Olympics, wasn't it, when they couldn't get the stadiums together? Or was that the World Cup?
The World Cup, when in 2014, England's first game, I want to say, was in Sao Paulo, and the stadium wasn't signed off a week before the first game.
And you'd think Brazil is a more established nation than some smaller countries, so hosting as a reason for wanting to increase it, I don't think is necessarily a good idea, because I don't think nowadays, with the infrastructure required, there's many countries that are capable of hosting it, and we've got to be careful that we don't stick a country into ridiculous financial debt for no reason, and then you get these elephant stadiums, what do they call, white elephants, that are just sitting there doing fuck all. It's not ideal. It's a complete waste of resource.
Oh, but that very much could have nearly happened with the Olympic Stadium in here, and unless your team went in there. Let's be honest. What would have happened with the stadium?
I have no idea. No idea.
I mean, how much would you use of it for athletics?
To be fair, we're doing the country a favour then by renting it for £1 million a year.
Taxman would beg to differ. One interesting idea that Wenger does have, and he kind of brings to the table, because one of the things you might be thinking is, so if the World Cup becomes every 2 years and the European Championships stays every 4s but becomes in an odd year, so you have what you said, World Cup, Euros, World Cup gap, repeat. How do you do qualifying?
Yeah, he wants to change the calendar each year to benefit the clubs.
So what he doesn't want is, and I'm not in complete disagreement against this, because next Saturday night, do you think I'm going out raving to watch England against Andorra? I'm not.
I feel like we played these bastards about 1 million times in the last 5 years.
To the extent that I wouldn't even be bothered to even watch the game. I didn't watch the game when the two teams played at Wembley. I've seen these games 1 million times now. Literally zero interest to me.
And especially the current England team as well. Maybe in the past, there's been the odd.
This England team's actually worth watching. Yeah.
But they're reliable enough to beat Andorra. There's been years where you'd think, you know what, these guys might shit the bed here and it would be comedy value, but not anymore. Like, they're professional enough and good enough.
Remembering the Steve McLaren game in Barcelona in Espanyol's old Olympic Stadium, was getting lynched, wasn't he? 0-0 at half time and stuff. Yeah. But you know you're going to break down these teams eventually. Yeah. But the point is, so you couldn't have proper qualification what you do now. Wenger's idea is to kind of have an October period, a little bit extended, might even be to 3 weeks or so. We just smash it all out there. But it probably means the nations like this would have to pre-qualify.
Yeah. And
you'd probably have like groups of say 3 or 4. Try and get it done. And get rid of some of these games, which I don't mind. One of the things which the Football Supporters Association, they're quite prominent now in Europe and stuff. One of their mottos is very much, which I agree with, is not a case that we want more football, we want better football. Like, I don't want, as a fan of
it's obvious
of
you
Tottenham,
want better football.
The two weren't actually linked there, but I see what you did, and it's a fair point. No, but I don't want my English Tottenham players to play Andorra next week. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just, you don't need the game. You don't need the game. I can understand, we play Albania a few days later. I can understand that. Albania were at the Euros a few years ago. Okay, they're not a side that's going to qualify, but I know it's going to be, it's competitive at least, right? It's a game that England will win 19 times out of 20, but at least it's competitive. The Andorra game, we win the game 100 times out of 100. It's not. And we've got San Marino in the same group in November as well. And it's like, we've already qualified. So the qualifying, this is what I say a lot about England, is like, it only bothers me every 2 years in the summer.
Yeah.
Because the qualifying now, I mean, the team's good enough. They stroll qualifying nearly all the time. I wouldn't mind getting a difficult team in qualifying, like, just to make it a bit more interesting.
I reckon we could put together an uncapped England 11 that could beat Andorra and Albania.
It's not even a reckon. It's a certainty.
Yeah. Just thinking, like, we've got so much depth. We've got enough players to beat both these teams that have never even got into the England.
Are we allowed Antonio, or we can't have that now?
We can't anymore, but he would have definitely been there. Yeah. This is, I think, a story that is not finished by any stretch.
Can I be honest with you? I think this will happen.
Yeah.
I think this will happen.
Yeah, me too.
The target is for it to begin from 2028. So as I said, Canada, Mexico and USA are sharing the extended
26.
format in 26. The Uruguay and Argentina were looking to bid for 2030 because that would obviously be the 100th anniversary of the first tournament, which was held in Uruguay.
And it makes sense to hold it there.
Argentina were the opponents in the final as well. So that would be quite nice, actually.
Very.
England obviously want it as well. They're going to keep knocking at the door.
Yeah.
And obviously, as I mentioned, African sides like Morocco and stuff might be interesting. I think Spain are trying to line up a bid as well for a World Cup in the near future. Now, as you said, obviously, if it's 28 and 30, it might just be a case you go, well, yeah, do you know what, England, your infrastructure's ready, you have 28, we'll have the 100th edition in Uruguay and Argentina in 30. And what happens to the European Championships? I'm not sure. Because the other thing is as well, as much as it could get voted through, UEFA have still got to rework their own schedule and their network? So do they go down a similar route with their qualifying for their own tournament? Does FIFA have complete governance over UEFA to say that's what you're doing now? I guess it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, in theory, UEFA is a member of FIFA, but how much actual control they have,
well,
is a completely different scenario.
But then, because of the Super League and stuff, you have to. How much control did UEFA have and stuff?
Yeah,
money will talk. And this Club World Cup idea, we're talking World Cup, Euros, World Cup gap. That gap will be a Club World Cup eventually, and there will be no break for players. Yeah. Unfortunately, there was a study done off the back of this investigation they did in 2016. Which suggested that players who play in summer tournaments at internationals don't get back to their peak condition till November. Imagine doing that every year.
Yeah. I think a great example for people to have a look at is cricket. Because the way that cricket tours, international tours, they're like months long and you're travelling away from family. And it seems to be relentless with the England national team that they're always on tour. They just cancelled the tour to Pakistan. They said, we'd had enough. And so many players now are dropping out of tournaments because this is too much.
Well, there's a few England players have recently kind of pulled it because of mental health reasons and stuff.
Completely. And it's as a result of being forced to play too much cricket because it's all controlled by the ICC and the ECB, and they're forcing these tours to happen. And they're not thinking about the players at all. I mean, yeah, they're flogged. They're absolutely flogged. The thing is as well,
like if you pass something like this off, it never goes back.
They'll
never get to 2032 and go, this was a bad idea, let's go back to 4 years. There's no going back.
I'm less convinced on that. I think there is an opportunity to maybe reverse
Are you mad?
it.
Like they're suddenly going to go, oh shit, we're going to be 8 billion short of our intended revenue over the next
couple of years. But I think if there's enough outrage,
it
could. But yeah, it's a difficult one.
Interesting. Yeah, Wenger's the man leading this for FIFA, which obviously gives it a little bit of credibility as a proper football man and not just a money power grab. And they are basically wooing the other confederations at the moment. And UEFA are a bit worried. I mean, the clubs are a bit worried for a number of reasons. Exactly what Suj just highlighted about kind of cricket players and stuff. Listen, we know footballers earn extortionate amounts of money, etc., but it doesn't guarantee you happiness.
Indeed, it doesn't. Indeed, it doesn't.
And an extra World Cup every 2 years don't guarantee that England's going to fucking win one, because we probably won't.
No. Well, we're getting better and we're getting closer, so have some faith that we may retain that Jules Rimet trophy at some point.
We'll get, it's not Jules Rimet anymore. We'll get people.
What is it now?
I don't know. It's the World Cup.
That thing, the golden thing.
Well, no, it was originally the Jules Rimet trophy, and then which England would have, I think Brazil 1970 were the last team to actually lift Jules Rimet trophy.
And then they changed it.
Correct. That's why Jules Rimet is still gleaming. I forgot my point now. I was too busy. I was thinking about Carlos Alberto.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in today to the People's Poll. I hope it shed a little bit of insight into what is happening at FIFA. By all means, have a look on YouTube, and there's definitely some content out there about what the potential plans in the future could be. We'll be back at you tomorrow with Fantasy SkyFF, a rundown on Sky Fantasy Football. Decent enough night yesterday. You got a little cheeky assist off Conor Gallagher.
A cheeky man of match as well.
Yeah. Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Lovely, jubbly. I stuck with Sanchez, which didn't work out particularly. Although I did all right.
Mate, I had a Twitter timeline, which I was keeping an eye on for Twitter stories I'm going to do for our advanced tier patrons today. So funny. The amount of people blowing hot and cold in terms of, will Sanchez ever get a bonus point? Like, will Sanchez ever get a save point? He's just a shit 2-pointer every week. And then at the end, Morpay scored, obviously, right at the death. And Sanchez fell into the bonus, got one bonus point. Yeah. But he got himself booked after the final whistle.
Oh, no.
So he still finished on the same anyway.
Oh, fantastic. So stay tuned for SkyFF tomorrow. James will be People's Poll on, Clash of Correspondence on Thursday, live stream on Friday, usual drill. And if you'll find out more about the show, patreon.com/Planet FPL. And you'll find out more how to get additional content, join our Cash League, Slack, all of that stuff as well. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man child.